The Alpha's Exile by M.J. Marinay. Chapter 1. Banished under the full moon. The moon hung high in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the dense forest. The night was alive with the sounds of nature, but within the pack's territory, an unnatural silence had settled. Elara stood in the center of the clearing, her heart pounding in her chest. The eyes of her pack mates were fixed on her, a mixture of pity and fear reflected in their gazes. Alpha Kieran, tall and imposing, stepped forward. His dark eyes bore into hers, and Elara felt a chill run down her spine. "Elara," he began, his voice cold and unyielding. "You have been accused of conspiring against the pack, of plotting to overthrow your Alpha." Elara's breath caught in her throat. She had known that tensions were rising within the pack, but never had she imagined that she would be the one standing accused. "I haven't done anything," she protested, her voice shaking. "I would never betray the pack." Kieran's expression hardened. "The evidence says otherwise. You were seen meeting with the rogue werewolves, exchanging information. You've put us all at risk." Elara's mind raced. The rogues, she had crossed paths with them while scouting the borders, but she had never shared any information with them. It was a chance encounter, nothing more. But as she looked around, she could see that her pleas were falling on deaf ears. The pack's beta, Lucas, stepped forward, his face grim. "The punishment for betrayal is banishment," he announced. "You are no longer welcome here, Elara." Elara's world tilted. She had grown up in this pack, fought beside them, protected them. And now, she was being cast out without so much as a trial. "Please," she pleaded, turning her gaze to Kieran. "You know me. You know I would never do this." Kieran's jaw clenched, but his eyes remained cold. "You've left me no choice," he said. "Leave our territory before the next full moon, or face the consequences." Tears welled in Elara's eyes as she realized there would be no reprieve. The pack she had dedicated her life to was casting her out without a second thought. She turned on her heel and began to walk away, her steps heavy with the weight of betrayal. As she crossed the border into the human world, she vowed to survive. She would protect the secret growing inside her, the unborn children she carried. No matter what it took, she would keep them safe from the dangers of both the human and werewolf worlds. Chapter 2. Surviving the human world. Weeks had passed since Elara had been banished, and she had managed to carve out a fragile existence in the human world. She had settled in a small, remote town far from the pack's territory, where no one knew her name or her past. The townspeople were friendly enough, though they kept a respectful distance, sensing that she was different in ways they couldn't quite understand. Elara had found work at a local diner, where she spent her days serving coffee and pie to the regulars. It was a simple life, but it was safe. The diner's owner, an older woman named Maggie, had taken a liking to her and had offered her a place to stay in the small apartment above the diner. Grateful for the stability, Elara had accepted, though she remained constantly vigilant, always aware of her surroundings. One evening, as she was cleaning up after closing, the door chimed and a man walked in. He was tall and ruggedly handsome, with dark hair and piercing blue eyes. Elara's heart skipped a beat as their eyes met, and she felt an inexplicable pull toward him. "We're closed," she said, her voice more uncertain than she intended. The man smiled, a charming, disarming grin that made her heart flutter. "I'm not here for food," he replied, his voice smooth. "I'm just passing through and thought I'd see if the rumors were true." Elara's brow furrowed. "Rumors?" He leaned against the counter, his gaze never leaving hers. "That there's a beautiful woman running this place. The name's Damon." Elara felt her cheeks flush, but she remained guarded. "I'm Elara," she said simply. "And I'm not interested in flattery." Damon chuckled, a low, rich sound that sent a shiver down her spine. "Fair enough. But I'm not just here for the view. I'm looking for someone." Elara's heart skipped a beat. Was he a hunter? Had Kieran sent someone after her? She forced herself to remain calm. "Who are you looking for?" Damon's expression darkened slightly, though his smile remained. "A friend, but it seems she's vanished without a trace." Elara's stomach twisted with unease. She had to be careful. I hope you find her, she said, turning back to her cleaning, hoping to end the conversation. I'm sure I will, Damon replied, his tone light again. It was nice meeting you, Elara. I'll be seeing you around. As he left the diner, Elara watched him go, her mind racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that Damon was hiding something, and that he might be a danger to her and the secret she was desperately trying to protect. Chapter 3. A Heart Divided. Time passed, and Elara's life settled into a new rhythm. The fear of being discovered slowly faded, replaced by the everyday concerns of raising her newborn twins, Eli and Asher. The boys were strong, their werewolf heritage evident in the way they grew quickly and exhibited uncanny strength even as infants. Elara kept them hidden as much as possible, knowing that their powers would only become more apparent as they aged. Despite her efforts to keep her distance, Elara found herself drawn to Damon. He had become a regular at the diner, always finding an excuse to linger after his meals, chatting with her in a way that made her feel seen and understood. Against her better judgment, she began to let her guard down around him, finding solace in his company. One evening, as the sun set and the diner emptied out, Damon stayed behind, helping her clean up. You've been quiet today, he observed, his voice gentle. Something on your mind? Elara hesitated, the weight of her secret pressing down on her. It's nothing, she replied, avoiding his gaze. Damon reached out, placing a hand on her arm, his touch sending a jolt through her. You don't have to carry everything alone, you know, he said softly. I'm here if you ever want to talk. Elara looked up at him, her eyes searching his. For a moment, she considered telling him everything about her past, about her children, about the constant fear she lived in. But the memory of Kieran's cold gaze and Lucas's betrayal stopped her. She couldn't trust anyone, not even someone who made her feel as safe as Damon did. Instead, she forced a smile. Thank you, Damon. But I'm fine. Damon studied her for a moment, his eyes filled with concern. All right, he said finally, though she could tell he didn't believe her. But the offer stands. As the weeks went by, the bond between Elara and Damon deepened. He became a fixture in her life, helping her with the boys and offering a shoulder to lean on when the weight of her secrets became too much to bear. Yet, despite the growing closeness, Elara couldn't shake the feeling that Damon was hiding something from her, just as she was from him. One night, as she sat in the small living room of her apartment, watching her sons sleep, she heard a knock on the door. When she opened it, she was surprised to find Damon standing there, looking more serious than she had ever seen him. Damon? What's wrong? He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Elara, there's something I need to tell you, he began, his voice filled with tension. Something I should have told you a long time ago. Elara's heart pounded in her chest as she braced herself for what was to come. Chapter 4. The Betrayal Unveiled. The silence in the room was deafening as Elara waited for Damon to speak. She could feel the tension radiating from him, and her own heart raced with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Elara, Damon began, his voice heavy with guilt, I haven't been entirely honest with you. I didn't just stumble upon this town by accident. I was sent here by a rival Alpha. Elara's blood ran cold. What do you mean? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Damon looked away, unable to meet her gaze. My Alpha knew about your banishment. He knew you were vulnerable, that you were carrying something precious. He sent me to find you, to earn your trust, and eventually to bring you and your children back to him. Elara staggered back, her mind reeling. You've been lying to me this whole time? Everything between us, it was all just a ploy. Damon's eyes flashed with pain. No, Elara, it wasn't like that. I admit, at first, I was following orders. But then I got to know you, and everything changed. I fell in love with you. Elara's mind was a whirlwind of emotions, anger, betrayal, confusion. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. You expect me to believe that after everything? After lying to me for months? Damon took a step closer, his expression pleading. I know it sounds impossible, but it's the truth. I never meant to hurt you, Elara. My feelings for you are real. But I couldn't figure out how to tell you the truth without losing you. Elara shook her head, backing away from him. You've already lost me, Damon. Everything we had was built on lies. How can I ever trust you again? Damon's shoulders slumped, the weight of her words crushing him. I never wanted this to happen. I tried to find a way out, to protect you and the boys. But now it's too late. What do you mean? Elara demanded, her fear for her children surging to the forefront. Damon hesitated before answering, his voice strained. My Alpha knows about the boys. He's sending his wolves to take them tonight. Panic gripped Elara's heart. We have to get out of here, she said, her voice trembling with urgency. She rushed to the crib where Eli and Asher slept peacefully, unaware of the danger closing in around them. Damon moved to help her, but she turned on him, her eyes blazing with anger. Don't touch them, she snapped, holding her sons protectively. You've done enough. Elara, please, Damon implored, his voice desperate. Let me help you. I know I don't deserve your trust, but I can't let anything happen to you or the boys. We need to leave now, before they get here. Elara hesitated, torn between her instinct to protect her children at all costs and the realization that Damon was their best chance of escape. She could feel the danger creeping closer, and she knew she couldn't afford to waste time. Fine, she said, her voice cold and determined. But if you so much as think about betraying us again, I'll make you regret it. Damon nodded, his expression resolute. I won't let you down, Elara. I swear it. They moved quickly, gathering what little they could carry. As they stepped out into the night, the air was thick with tension. The forest that had once been her sanctuary now felt like a trap closing in on her. As they ran through the darkness, Damon led them toward a hidden path he had discovered while scouting the area. It would take them out of town and into the deeper wilderness, where they could hopefully lose the wolves that were undoubtedly already on their trail. But as they reached the edge of the forest, a group of figures emerged from the shadows, werewolves, their eyes glowing with the predatory hunger of the hunt. Run! Damon shouted, pushing Elara ahead as he shifted into his wolf form. He charged at the attackers, determined to buy her time to escape. Elara's heart pounded in her ears as she clutched her sons tightly, sprinting through the trees. She could hear the sounds of the battle behind her, snarls, growls, and the sickening thud of bodies colliding. Fear threatened to overwhelm her, but she forced herself to keep moving, knowing that her children's lives depended on it. Suddenly, a familiar scent filled her nostrils, one that made her blood run cold. It was Kieran. He stepped out from behind a tree, his eyes locked on hers with a look of dark triumph. Elara, he said, his voice smooth and menacing. You didn't really think you could escape, did you? Elara's heart sank. Why are you here? She demanded, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and fury. Kieran smiled, a cruel twist of his lips. To take back what's mine. You and those abominations you call children belong to me. Elara's eyes blazed with defiance. You'll never take them, she spat. I'll die before I let you harm them. Kieran's smile widened. That can be arranged. Before Elara could react, Kieran lunged at her, his movements too fast for her to counter. But just as he was about to strike, Damon appeared out of nowhere, crashing into Kieran with the full force of his wolf form. Go! Damon roared, his voice strained with the effort of holding Kieran off. Elara didn't need to be told twice. She turned and ran, her heart breaking as she left Damon behind. She knew he was buying her time with his life, and she prayed it would be enough. Chapter 5. Return to the Pack. Elara's legs burned with exhaustion as she pushed forward, every step fueled by the desperate need to protect her children. She didn't know how long she had been running, but she didn't dare stop. The sounds of the fight had faded into the distance, but she knew the danger wasn't over. As dawn began to break, Elara stumbled upon a small cave nestled in the side of a hill. It was hidden from view, and she knew it would be a good place to rest and regroup. She slipped inside, cradling Eli and Asher in her arms, and collapsed onto the cold stone floor, her body trembling with exhaustion and fear. For a few precious moments, she allowed herself to breathe, to let the adrenaline that had been driving her subside. She looked down at her sleeping sons, their faces peaceful and innocent. They had no idea of the chaos that had surrounded them, and she was determined to keep it that way. But Elara knew she couldn't stay here forever. She needed a plan, and fast. She considered her options, but the reality was grim. With Damon gone and Kieran hunting her, there was only one place she could turn to, the pack she had once called home. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but she knew it was the only way to ensure her children's safety. She would have to return to the pack and face the ghosts of her past, confront the betrayal that had shattered her life. After resting for a few hours, Elara set out again, this time heading toward the territory she had once been banished from. The journey was long and treacherous, but she was driven by a fierce determination to protect her children. When she finally reached the pack's borders, she was greeted by a familiar figure, Lucas. He had aged since she last saw him, his face lined with worry and regret. "Elara," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again." "I didn't have a choice," Elara replied, her tone guarded. "I need your help, Lucas. Kieran is hunting us, and I can't protect my sons alone." Lucas nodded, his expression grim. "We've heard rumors. The pack is in chaos without you, Elara. Kieran's leadership has been a disaster, and many have left. But those who remain, they're loyal to you." Elara's heart ached at the thought of the pack she had once loved, now fractured and broken. "I didn't come back to reclaim my place," she said, her voice firm. "I just need a safe place for my children." Lucas looked at the boys, his eyes softening. "They'll be safe here," he promised. "But Kieran won't stop until he gets what he wants. You know that." Elara nodded, her resolve hardening. "Then we have to stop him." Together, they entered the pack's territory, where Elara was met with a mix of shock and relief from those who remained. She could see the hope in their eyes, the belief that she might be the one to save them from the nightmare Kieran had created. In the days that followed, Elara and Lucas rallied the pack, preparing for the inevitable confrontation with Kieran. She knew that this would be the ultimate test, not just of her strength, but of her ability to forgive and move forward. The final battle was brutal, a clash of wills and power that left scars on both the land and the souls of those who fought. But in the end, it was Elara's determination and the love she had for her children that gave her the strength to defeat Kieran once and for all. With Kieran gone, the pack slowly began to rebuild. Elara found herself once again at the center of their lives, though this time she was not alone. Damon, miraculously alive but gravely injured, had returned to her side, his love and loyalty proven beyond doubt. Elara forgave him, understanding that they had both been caught in a web of deceit that had nearly destroyed them. Together, they began to heal, to create a new life for themselves and their children within the safety of the pack. As the full moon rose over the forest, Elara stood with Damon, Eli, and Asher at her side, looking out over the land that had once been her prison and was now her sanctuary. She had been through hell and back, but she had survived. She had protected her family and found a love stronger than any betrayal. And as the moonlight bathed them in its soft glow, Elara knew that they would face whatever challenges lay ahead together as a family. The end.